So, hello everyone. Good afternoon. I am Hitendra Padalia, and I am head Forestry and Ecology Department at IIRS Dehradun. Today, I will be talking about the geospatial application in forestry and ecology discipline. So, as you are aware, that today a lot of progress has been made as far as the application of geospatial technology in ecological sciences or forestry. So we have now a lot of scope of using these technologies for better forest management as well as for the conservation and sustainable use of different ecosystems. So if you have just look at the global picture, most of you may not be having the forestry and ecology background. So I will just give you a brief background. What is the status of forest today? That we have something around 30% of the total terrestrial surface area is occupied by the forest. So this is as per the Global Forest Resource Assessment. So it comes around 4 billion hectare. And we have additionally around 30% area under grasslands and woodlands. So you can understand that around 60% area is in some kind of naturalness. Forest, grasslands, woodlands exist today on the surface of this planet. And if you further go into the within the forest area, so within the forest we have tropical forest, boreal forest, temperate forest, subtropical forest, and these are I'm talking about the broad categories of forest, because tropical forests constitute about 47% of the total forest cover, and followed by boreal forest 27, temperate forest 16, and 11% subtropical forest. This is very important information because you need to know wherever you are in whatever country you are, you should know what are the different type of forest and how much area is within each forest types, and what are the uniqueness of different forest type, and what are the benefits of ecosystem services available to respective places. And the cause of worry today is, as if we are talking today a lot about climate change, but in the case of forestry and ecology discipline, it is a biological system, and today the maximum threats is from deforestation. Still it is from deforestation because forests are being lost, and apart from that, biological invasion, invasive species are causing a lot of problem across the countries. And then we have forest fragmentations, which is causing loss of contiguity of wildlife. So we have, apart from climate change also, we have many other factors which are actually causing the deterioration of the our natural wealth, that is forest, grasslands, woodlands, and the range of ecosystem services these entities provide to human beings. And so why it is forests are deforested? Just I am giving one statistics that 14% of deforestation globally is basically happening because of the beef production, vegetable oil, that is palm oil, coca, coffee, and peppers. And most of these is happening actually in the tropical forest. That is most of it is happening in the near to the equator and the southern hemisphere. And other than this, a lot of ecological services are impacted by urbanization. Urbanization is a very big phenomena now, mostly in the developing countries. And then shifting cultivation has been a traditional practice, but still it is many part of the tropical forest are being affected by shifting cultivation, and it has caused a lot of erosion of biodiversity in different zones. Then there are forest production activities also, in particular in temperate forest, in the mid latitudes. There are forest production activities are taken up. Wildfire is a recent thing which is actually causing a lot of problem, and there are evidence that now globally the forest fire incidences are actually increasing and becoming more and more widespread, and forest fire sizes are also increasing. So this is just I wanted to give you a brief background, and it is all leading to a lot of environmental problems today. And we have already felt that because of the loss of the forest, because of the loss of the biodiversity and ecosystem services, the livelihood of the directly dependent people as well as the in general the public, we are getting impacted by this. So we have to really we have to generate good scientific information on forest and ecological systems, and we have to actually use the scientific information very judiciously so that we can ensure a sustainable and good conservation of our protected areas. Now, you may be knowing all these things. I will not go into detail of these. Why geospatial technology is useful? On one side, you have remote sensing that provides you data over large area. That is very much required for areas like forests, which are actually quite remote and in difficult terrain, and field-based inventory at time for many parameters is not possible. A regular inventory, and satellite provides systematic observations. So with the help of satellite systematic observation, you can really develop a long-term ecological data for any ecological system. So that is the advantage of using remote sensing. GIS is again very much relevant for in this field, because forest ecosystem essentially is a multi-layer system. There are geology in the underneath the soil, then there is a soil, then there is a vegetation, then so likewise it is a layered system. So you need a GIS system in order to integrate all these themes and then analyze the information in an integrated manner. So that is the advantage of GIS here. And GPS, you know, there are many other aspects of forest ecosystem where you have animals which can be tagged with GPS, and there are other kind of information on various under canopy, which is not visible directly by the remote sensing. You can collect data using GPS and you can integrate it in GIS. So all these three technologies are, that's why they are very much relevant for the purpose. Now, recently there are a lot of other things are happening apart from satellite observations. You have drones, which is giving you proximal remote sensing. It's very close to the ground, so you have very good view of very fine scale feature, which are actually very common in the forest and grasslands areas. Sometimes you have to really go up to the level of species in a grassland area, so you really need very high resolution images. And at the same time, you know, now ground based monitoring is also getting a lot of again attention, because you have now camera traps, you have acoustics techniques, sound recorders, and you also have, as I told you, satellite telemetry, wherein you can tag the mobile animals, and you have other kind of technique also been developed by researchers in environmental DNA and use of smartphone for capturing the photographs of interest species. So all this data which is coming from different kind of devices, so this data, it can be easily integrated in GIS and can be really linked with the satellite observation, and you can develop a holistic understanding of an ecosystem, what is happening in an ecosystem with respect to different processes, abiotic processes and biotic part like animals and birds and wildlife. So for every component of an ecosystem, you have today's scope of collecting data and analyzing all the data in a GIS domain. This is just with the example of Indian satellite system, Earth observation system. I'm trying to explain that we have traveled along now, starting from 1972 with Landsat MSS. India developed our own system in 1987, and then subsequently we have been actually improving our resolution of the satellite images, and we have been providing very frequent images now, and we have been also covering the electromagnetic spectrum, not only in optical region but also in middle infrared region, thermal region, and even in microwave region. And we are able to now today in a position that we are able to exploit the all the part of the electromagnetic spectrum for developing a good sensing for the Earth system. And this is very useful for our, particularly for conservation and for ecosystem dynamics studies. So here you can see that India has different series of satellites observing cartography, observing forest, and observing the areas which are under cloud during monsoon season through microwave remote sensing. So a lot of progress has already been made, and Also, there was a time when we were very much in the forefront that we developed a multi-tier system of capturing images from the same platform. Waves list 3, list 4 images, and 3 different type of picture with different information requirement were captured from the single platform. And it has proven a workhorse for our forest cover mapping. For example, list 3 satellite images, they have been extensively used in India for generating information in forest loss and gain information. And today also this data is being used. AWIPS data has again been used in our national level yearly land use land cover monitoring, particularly for crop areas. And list for images has been used again to find out those areas where rapid developmental activities like mining and other aspects where forests are being diverted for some non-forestry use or encroachments. Similarly, cartoset data. So these data sets has provided a fine scale changes which are taking place in any part of the country. So they have been extensively used. Now, when you do the remote sensing, mostly people use optical remote sensing data. So you have to really understand that the part of electromagnetic spectrum which is used for optical remote sensing, starting from 400 nanometer to 2400 nanometer. This is basically used in optical remote sensing. So you should have an idea that how the different feature of the earth, like vegetation, soil, water, how they behave in this optical region, and as wavelength changes, how the reflectance of the feature changes. This is very important to understand. And for example, for a healthy vegetation, how a shape of a healthy vegetation spectra looks like, and when the vegetation is under stress, what are the changes expected in this normal uh, in comparison to this normal ideal spectral signature. And this spectral signature is a very good scientific evidence that how leaf pigments play important role in visible vision. Near infrared region, the cell structure plays a very important role. And short wave infrared, there are other biochemicals in the plant's body like cellulose, lignin, protein, biochemicals, water content. They determine the reflectance in the short wave infrared region. So this is quite useful to study that if anybody has to develop a in-depth understanding of optical remote sensing, so he has to understand this. Also with respect to soil, when dry soil, when moist soil, how they behave differently. For example, when a soil is rich in iron content, how it behaves. When it is rich in organic matter, how differently looks like. So all these aspects of uh, and you have to understand. Then the other part of when you use optical remote sensing data for things like in forestry, like for vegetation type mapping or for uh, biome mapping, etc. So when you are using satellite remote sensing data, so you should have an, India is a very large country, so you should have an idea that what will be the optimal season for collecting these satellite images. And it is not that for entire India, you can use the same month images, similar month images for preparing a vegetation type map. For different part of the country, you have different climates and different times for rainfall and the dry season. So you accordingly the researchers have suggested the time duration in which the satellite data should be observed. For example, should be collected. For example, high altitude Himalaya, the cloud-free and the snow-free images will only be available during the month of September to October. So rest of the time, you will not find cloud-free and snow-free images for Himalaya, for the states like Himachal and Uttarakhand higher reaches. And these are a few glimpses of satellite remote sensing data, although every one of you today nowadays satellite data is already in a lot of data is in public domain. So you are already aware, you might have seen these kind of representation of feature on the satellite data. I'm not going detail of this. So this is again at a very high resolutions, how the actually the man-made feature looks. They looks very regular in shape, and otherwise for example, high resolution images in word view image, for example, here I have shown that how you can interpret the density variation in a forest area what is the condition when you will call an area as a scrub where less than 10% canopy density, and which is the forest, and how density variations looks like in a satellite, in a high resolution satellite image. So the one thing that you need satellite remote sensing, of course, as I told, that you need for national level assessment condition of the forest, and you have to have information on the status of forest in terms of loss and gain of forest at a regular period. And the first time this was the attempt made to know the status of India's forest. India at the time that there were a lot of deforestation was happening, and satellite remote sensing data really revealed the situation that condition of the forest is not good, and there is a need to actually enforce laws. And during that time duration, the Forest Conservation Act also came, and then subsequently India started its forest cover monitoring program in the form of FSI, and since then we have been regularly monitoring forest cover in the country. And as far as FSI, you may be aware, Forest Survey of India is a nodal agency of Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and it actually used the Indian remote sensing data and generate reports binary, and they give information on the actually the forest cover and tree cover and forest cover. They also study the changes in the canopy conditions from dense, very dense to open, and open to dense. So this gives a help. This helps in actually understanding whether our forests are getting degraded in some part of the country, or is there any improvement in the forest. So this is a very good indicator for the forest management who are we have a large workforce in the forest department across country who works for the conservation and protection of our forest. So they also get a feedback that what is the status of their forest and what they need to do in the areas where forests are not doing well. So this type of national level assessment is very important for actually ensuring the conservation and protection of our forest. Then, for many other ecological studies, you need further detail, further level of information on the vegetation type, what we call, and vegetation type. Further, you can go up to community level and community to up to species level. So you need information at different level always, and for a planning level, maybe you need, like for working plan preparation, you need a vegetation type map. And then if you really going for ecosystem studies, ecosystem dynamic study, maybe you need community type map. And sometimes many species are valuable from commercial point of view, so you need species information also. So a vegetation type map, which is quite comprehensive, where can actually meet the requirement of all these requirements. So one of these vegetation type map was prepared using list 3 satellite remote sensing data for entire country. And if you see this vegetation type map, there are the satellite data has been used, list 3 satellite data, but apart from that, a classification scheme is required, which is devised by ecologists. So ecologists know that what kind of climate is there across the country, and they have their own system of classifications, and based on that, actually they suggest that at what scale what classes nomenclature should be there, and then when you go at a finer scale, what should be the name of the classes. So likewise, a hierarchical classification scheme is developed, and then the satellite data is used to generate the information. So this is the way how vegetation types maps are prepared at different scales. And this is another example that when you use nowadays, you have now high resolution satellite data like Sentinel 10-meter data. So you have a scope of improving the vegetation type map up to community map, or up to sometime the species map also, where the species occurs gregariously. So this is an example of Western Himalaya where machine learning has been used to generate a wall-to-wall map of the subalpine and alpine. Now you can see from the legend itself that this type of classification is very detailed, and this has been possible now because you have now flexibility of using freely available data from Sentinel satellite series, and you have no data consistency that you can get the almost the same or similar data for a large area, and you have now access to machine learning techniques like random forest, support vector machines, or deep learning technique, and you have access to cloud platform like Google Earth Engine. So these actually, all these developments are helping us today to create the maps which otherwise would have taken 3 years times to prepare similar type of map, and scene by scene, and then mosaicing them. So now all this hardship has gone, and now we are able to implement the algorithm over large areas. But we should have even today we should have a very good ground truth information about the species which we are interested. But part of it is also now easy, because it is, you have the access to Google images, very high resolution images, so you can always have a first level of ground truth information from very high resolution images available. So this is the way now ecological system across the world their maps are being improved, and they are becoming much more finer, and this information is really now is directly useful by the authorities like forest management managers. Then the other aspect of using direct use of remote sensing, you all are aware that change studies we have been doing, and across the globe now the large scale basis the forest cover monitoring is happening, and Landsat data is being extensively used for forest cover mapping at global scales. So these are the initial stages when in northeast biological biodiversity hotspot. At in India we have deforestation hotspot like northeast, and a lot of forest we have lost over the year to agriculture. And these were the preliminary study which we did, and that time we highlighted that yes, that there is large scale deforestation is happening, and this is a case of Sonitpur in Assam, where you can see that in the areas in the red color, they have been lost in a very short period of time of a 10-year time, and a lot of forest has been lost. Then further, there could be other aspect of like understanding the changes in the forest is in terms of forest fragmentation. You know, the country like India, we have many part of our country, we have animals which are wide-ranging animals like elephants, tigers, we have rhino, and these actually animals, if you allow them to move, they can move to several hundreds of kilometers across the landscapes. So what did they require? Basically, they require the contiguity in their habitat, and their habitat should be disturbance free, and there should be good forage availability. And but India, you know, our population is growing, and we have always a demand for land for agriculture. So as a result, what happened? There have been many areas like northeast, as I'm showing here. In last 80 years, many the corridors where elephants moves, wild population of elephants moves, have been deforested. And red color indicates the total deforestation of forest cover. So there are such things happening. For example, in central India, the areas where elephants populations are there, they're quite fragmented actually. There are the patches which are there. Some of the patches got disappeared also, but these are the remnant patches where elephant populations resides. And then actually the elephant has to depend on because habitat has already shrunk, so they have to depend on outside agriculture crop for their food requirement. As a result, it lead to animal elephant human conflict. And you may be aware that today in India we have a lot of human elephant conflict cases, and every year 500 elephants are killed because of this problem. So here satellite remote sensing data, if you really can gather the images of past 30 or 40 year time duration, and then you try to analyze these images with respect to animal information on animal presence in this area, so you can actually come out with a kind of understanding what has really has happened, why these wild human wildlife conflicts are increasing. Is it because of the fragmentation of habitat? So fragmentation of habitat is a serious issue today. Loss of habitat is one thing, but fragmentation and isolation of the forest patches is another very critical problem today. Then other aspect of that in the forest, changes in the forest are happening due to activities like shifting cultivation, where you actually cut the forest at a different time duration. And but now the advantage is that because you have long archive of satellite imagery, and you have the now flexibility that you can actually because of the every year you have satellite image, so you can actually determine that based on the historical database. If in your area you want to know that at what time the clearance of the forest land has happened, so you can actually prepare a chronology of the disturbance or the forest clearing for a particular area. So this type of maps also are being possible today to generate, and it gives you a time series data to you. And if you depend on some time series data analysis algorithm, so it will highlight the disturbance dynamics in your area for several decades back in the history, and this actually helps in what is the structure of today's forest in that area, whether there is some natural forest left, or there are secondary forest or scrub forest, what is their age, how much carbon accumulation they might have done over the year. So all these aspect of carbon also can be studied based on the analysis of the time series data. Then this is an example of global forest watch, where Lancet data is being used annually. They are generating the forest loss information for entire globe forest loss, and in some time they are also generating information on forest recovery. So blue color and red color, pink color is basically forest loss information. So this type of algorithms are basically machine learning based algorithm, and they have been trained to very accurately actually map the forest clearance and vegetation clearance which is happening across the globe. And every year this type of data becomes available to you, and this actually helps a lot in understanding what is happening globally with respect to the forest, and how the forests are getting impacted by the socio-economic activity which are happening and in a particular country, or what is the demand of forest timber demand and etc. other things which are leading to deforestation in one country. So all these things, the scientific questions which are there, they can be addressed when you actually have such kind of database for entire globe, and really understand how to take decision. Then the other aspect of forestry and ecology, and there is grassland and forest are there, they seasonally change, and the season by in different season they undergo certain changes. Some of the forests are, these changes are quite prominent, like deciduous forest where leaf falls happens at a particular time period, and the new leaves come at a different time period. So this is a very critical aspect of forest ecosystem, that they undergo seasonal changes because they have to go, because the environment is like that. Only when environmental condition is changing, the forest, their traits are also changing. So this is also a very interesting area to explore, that how our forest traits, for example, their leaf sizes and their bud bursting time, and their peak leaf period, how these things are actually behaving with respect to environment. So this is a very important aspect today, because we want to understand the ecosystem response. We know that our climate is changing globally and regionally also. So, but now today we want to know how our forest responds, how our grassland responds. So, if you have to understand the response, which is very complex actually for natural ecosystem, but still, if you use things like functional traits or phenology, you can get an idea. And this is one example where satellite remote sensing can really help you in pinpointing that when the season will start and when the season will end for a particular forest type. Example given here, sal forest for central India. So this is possible because you are today having a very high frequency observation of phenology every daily basis, and like for MODIS from MODIS, and this actually is very useful for understanding large scale basis how the forests are behaving with respect to the seasonal changes. In some year, if droughts and some other fire related activities are becoming very extreme, so then also you will find that there are changes in phenology. So you can understand that what is the impact of such environmental changes. Then the other aspect is the forests are not only the simply the assemblies of trees and herbs and grasses, but it is a habitat for biodiversity. There are different plant communities are there within the forest systems, and this is a diverse habitat. This is not a single species like human beings. Like in urban area, we only human beings are dominating, but in a forest system, there are many species are there. Some of them are rare. Some of them are actually endemic also. Endemic is a very universal property. Like if you have endemic species in an area, means that no part of the globe is having the same kind of species. So it is a very, very unique distinction. If any ecosystem, like for example, Western Ghats and in northeast or in higher Himalaya, we have many endemic plant species, animals, which are only exclusively limited to these areas, not found elsewhere. So this is the aspect of biodiversity, and biodiversity is today very important for human well-being. You all know not only the taxonomic biodiversity, the number of species, and but also the functional aspect of biodiversity is very critical today. If you have to really make our Earth or planet suitable for our living, and we want that the human welfare should be there, we should be continuously driving the benefit from available from the biodiversity. So we have to conserve biodiversity. And but the challenges in this is that biodiversity is unevenly distributed, and countries like India, where four global biodiversity hotspots are there, but still it is a very large country, and we decide conservation at local level, where to create national parks, where to create sanctuaries. So we need actually a wall-to-wall mapping of biodiversity also, and the areas which need more attention than other areas, those things are very important. So this is one approach which has been developed based on landscape ecological principles, using remote sensing and geographic information system and field inventory, extensive field inventory all across the country. And these type of maps have been created. For example, a state like for Himachal, if you see here, there are four maps shown here. One is vegetation type map, then there is a forest fragmentation map, and then there is a disturbance regime map. Disturbance regime means that in every ecosystem there are natural disturbances and there are man-made disturbances. Natural disturbances like landslides and other things, but man-made disturbances like fuel wood collection and water collections and harvesting of medicinal plant, etc. So this happens when the human dominance in an area increases. For example, settlement can be served as indicator of disturbance, and expansion of road network and railway network. All these things are actually increase the proximity of the human well-beings to biological resources. So in that sense, that at a country level, it gives a fairly good idea how the human dominance over landscape is increasing and how it is actually causing disturbances in the natural areas. And then biological richness map is the ultimate thing which you require, because this map actually shows you the areas which need specific attention with regard to, because here the high biological richness areas, they indicate that these are the areas where actually still the naturalness is there, and these are the areas where biodiversity, if you protect such areas, the biodiversity will evolve over time because the conditions are conducive. And this is also the area where you have protection to the endemic plants, and also the area where the in terms of economic value of the plants, you have the congregation of species which are having higher economic value or even future economic value. Such type of aspects are taken care while modeling the biological richness. So based on these maps, you can actually overlay the protected areas boundary, and you can see that whether our protected areas are their boundaries are properly rationalized, with whether they are really covering the area which require conservation, or they are out, such areas are outside the protected area. Then this is not a good situation. And then other aspect of that application of this is commercial aspect, that we have many commercial. Forest has to provide livelihood to the large population, which among the tribal peoples, and in remote areas, you have a lot of dependency. So you need some information on the resources which are available in their area. So if you can map those resources using remote sensing, then it makes a lot of sense in terms of that availability of that particular products from that area, how much is the availability, and how if a particular industry has to come in that area for processing those non-timber forest produce, so then that can only also be planned. So this is some of these non-timber forest produce have been mapped, like bamboo. Satellite remote sensing has been very, very successful. Grasslands mapping, grasslands and chilgoja, ephedra, sola, saffron, hippopi. So these are some of the few examples. Researchers have developed other maps also local level. So this type of mapping has also been done with respect to this non-timber forest produce. Then comes the other aspect is the climate change. You know that forests are useful in mitigation of climate change because they can remove the excess atmospheric carbon dioxide, and they can store it as organic carbon. I'm not going to field the part of it, how it is the carbon inventory is being made, but some of the things, new things which are now, because researchers are able to use in forestry, is the LiDAR, which is basically gives you 3D information about the forest, and 3D information is in turn is useful in refining the biomass estimates and preparing the improved carbon and biomass map for any area. So this way, and the other aspect is, if you have a 3D structure of a forest, you can also understand the ecology of many animal, birds, and also those who are arboreal mammals, etc. So this also is a very important aspect. The such type of data is very useful, LiDAR data in ecological studies. So nowadays we are able to develop methods by which we are able to, for example, in this case, this is a plantation area, and we are able to calculate the carbon stock of different plantation stands in a particular area, and in a very accurate manner. And here we are able to use both the SAR data as well as the LiDAR data. So both kind of data we are able to integrate, and then we are able to prepare the above ground biomass map, and this can be converted into above ground carbon map also. And then we are also able to estimate how much is the uncertainty, how much is the further scope of improving this model. So this is very new things as far as our national forest inventory is there, that because we don't have today maps which show, we have forest cover maps today which show the changes in forest area, but we don't have national level maps which show changes in biomass over the time, and how much biomass is lost, how much biomass is gained. So now because technically it is possible to do, so that is what is being demonstrated here for a plantation area. And then this is a natural area in Doon Valley in Dehradun. So here you can see that again LiDAR data, ISET2 data has been used to generate a forest canopy information for Sal Surya Robusta Sal forest in Doon Valley. And then subsequently this height map, canopy height map, has been used to generate the biomass map for the entire Doon Valley. So Doon Valley is a very distinct, it is a valley here in lower Himalaya, and you can see that the machine learning and the LiDAR and the field inventory data and the remote sensing data, all when we used, it actually helps in capturing the pattern, how biomass is distributed in an area. And you can see that here, those of you who have visited in the Dehradun area or seen this area on satellite image, it really captured the pattern that on ridges you have very low biomass, on the northern aspects you have very high biomass. So it in a sense it makes sense that yes, our modern methods which we are working, they are working well, and these maps are very much suitable for use by the forest department for their planning, conservation planning, or for if they want to actually promote carbon incentive activities. So such kind of things are possible. The other aspect of forest is that forest health assessment, or because forest, the forest traits like chemical traits and physical traits of forest in terms of LAI, or chemical traits in terms of the chlorophyll, nitrogen, etc. So these also makes a lot of important information, because when you have information on these traits in terms of maps available for different traits, so you can really understand what is happening in the forest system, how these chemistry, foliar chemistry is changing at different time in an year, and how forests are coping with the stress. So when forests are under stress, they will definitely show some type of symptoms in terms of change in their chemical composition. Or for example, during stress season, carotenoid contents of the leaf increases and chlorophyll goes down. So such type of plants have adaptations according to their locality. And if you are able to capture such type of traits from, say, satellite remote sensing, that it is very important. Like we are very particular about the agricultural crops, but for natural area, for forest also, if we can understand such trait variation, so then it actually helps in how understanding how our forest systems are behaving with respect to the environmental changes, because a lot of heat waves are happening, drought incidences are happening. Forest fire is also causing many forest actually forest after fire are recovering very late. So such type of things, if insect pest is another problem in the forest area. So if such type of traits you are able to, biochemical trait, if you are able to extract through hyperspectral remote sensing, then it makes a lot of sense. And then the other aspect of understanding the ecosystem is that to understand the gaseous exchange, you know that forests are living entity, they interact with the atmosphere, and they forests release certain kind of gases and they absorb certain kind of gases. This is happening, and you know that eddy flux tower is a technique which is quite a sophisticated technique, where the flux towers are actually installed in the forest area, and there is mounted with different type of sensors for measuring meteorological information as well as from the measuring the greenhouse gases. And when you do such type of observation and recording over a long period of time, and when you integrate this data with satellite remote sensing data and some models which are if you are interested, for example, productivity, then there are different sets of models. And if you are interested in actually water cycle, then different types of models are there. So if you do this kind of science, you can really have an insight into how the processes are happening and within the forest system, and how forest actually give responses when they are disturbed or when they are not properly managed. So this is a very interesting area of research also, and it has a lot of implications for forest management under changing climatic conditions. So this is an example I'm showing you here for moist deciduous sal forest and mixed plantation. The upper panel is for mixed moist deciduous sal forest, and lower panel is for the mixed species plantation, native species plantation. The upper case, you can see that above zero line there are certain peaks, green color peaks, and while most of the peaks are actually green shaded area is below the zero line. So it suggests that most part of the year forest actually absorb carbon dioxide, and it net absorption of carbon dioxide is happening. And in certain dates, you know, net release of carbon is also happening, that in certain summer months. So it means that forest looks green, and anybody while looking at the green forest will say that yes, it is a net sink, it absorbs carbon dioxide more than it releases. But when you install such type of instruments, they reveal that it's not truth. Sometimes the respiration become more than the photosynthesis, and at the time forest become a net source of the carbon. The other implication of this finding is that, you know, when you don't manage your forest properly, and in your area a lot of grazing is there, forest the wildfires are there, what will happen in those cases? Your peaks, these peaks will further increase, your respiration will further increase over the photosynthesis, and then your ability of your forest to act as a mitigator of global warming will slowly diminish. So this is the implication of such type of sophisticated instrumentation installing on the ground in terms of eddy flux tower, and then using it for the understanding the phenomena. And the other hand, when you do plantation activities, so it is proven that at early stages of plantation, when they are not quite old, for example here, so you find that all the time these plantations are actually absorbing the carbon. So that's why there is a always people favor that we should do more plantation activity. In fact, there is a Green India program also, and globally also a lot of plantation activities are happening across the continents, and the argument is that the plantation absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So it is showing that even native species plantation, it is not always necessary that you take exotic plantation, exotic species in the country and then plant them. Even native species, also selected native species from the local natural forest, they can be quite fast in absorbing the atmospheric carbon and storing them into wood. Other aspect is of forestry is that forest, you have native vegetation which has been originally there, but as human beings are there, movement is increasing, and a lot of across the continents, and a lot of transportation is happening. So invasive species which comes from outside, if they find our place better than their area, then they try to spread in this area. And in India, actually, we have a lot of problem of this invasion, and we have something around more than 100 species of plants which are not Indian origin, but today they are actually causing a lot of problem for the forest regeneration, grasslands, and as well as it is many areas these invasive plants actually are cause of the fire in those areas, and excessive fire events are happening because the area has been occupied by the invasive. So this is a very challenging thing as far as invasive is there, and it is also very chronic problem which actually, without coming to our notice, it actually causes loss of biodiversity from our important ecological areas. So these are the one ways you directly map the invasive plants if their spectral signature are quite unique. This is a case of one Hyptis suvalens plant species I'm showing you in Dehradun Valley, where it has been possible to map it. But other areas, like if you are not able to map the directly using satellite data, then the other aspect is you do some kind of ecological niche modeling or species distribution modeling. If you relate the occurrence data with the climatic data, so it can help you in at least knowing that which are the area where these species can spread in future. So you can a rough idea of the potential invasion range of the species can be determined a priori. And this is actually very useful because, in many protected area, for example, central in India, we have a lot of protected area, Kanha and Page and other. They are having very good grasslands patches. And many of such invasive plants are actually, they invade the grasslands. So if you have a prior idea that how many actually different type of invasive species can cause problem in our grasslands, then of course then you will take certain mitigatory action, and you can actually, you will try to revive your natural ecosystem. You will try to minimize disturbance in the area, and then it will be useful for you, because otherwise once the invasive plants come at the fence boundary, at the boundary of your reserve, it will be very difficult to actually physically displace them, physically erase them. So you need long-term strategy to mitigate, to remove these, to contain, actually at least to contain these invasive plants. These type of actually inputs can be really useful. Then the other aspect is forestry. Because of the tropical climatic conditions, and we also have a lot of forest fire incidences. Summer, we have, that India undergoes very hot summer, and because of that, our forest systems are actually, not only forest, today we have a lot of burning in a cropland system also, but in forest, they undergo rise in temperature and rise in aridity, and mm, limited moisture content. So as a result, our forests are quite prone to forest fire incidences, and as human population is spreading across the system, so incidences are also increasing. So this is very useful, because satellite data here can detect the actual occurrence of the fire where it is happening, and using thermal remote sensing. And also it is able to suggest you areas where actually could be chances of more fire, in terms of forest fire risk zonations, where multiple parameters are considered. Some are of vegetation and fuel, and some are of topography, and some are of meteorological or climatic condition parameter, and human parameter. Their human the prevalence in the system, like in terms of their settlements, in terms of their movement across the landscape, all those things if you consider. So today we are in a position that we are able to figure out which are our highly vulnerable areas in terms of forest fire. And through modeling also, through meteorological data, it has been possible today that information is available, that how the temperature is rising in a particular area, how forest fire environment is being created, which is the peak time when there are maximum chances of forest fire, and which is the when the rain happens, how these temperature goes down. So all those things today in terms of model products are becoming available for the forest official. The other aspect is that ecological aspects, that you have today ability that to understand the fire regime in a particular ecosystem, how the plant species are coping with the fire regime in that area, whether the fire species community composition has changed, or plant communities are showing some changes, and corresponding changes in the insects and other dependent wildlife population is also happening. So these are the things which opens the scope for ecological studies and understand the impact of long-term impact of forest fire on ecosystems. Then this is the study which again one example I am showing is satellite telemetry study. And satellite telemetry is a very interesting technique, because here you have to fix a tag, or there is a collar that's called collar or transmitter on the particular animal species. Like here in the case of this is fixed on a bird called Jacobin cuckoo, which comes from South Africa to India, and this comes to Dehradun. Actually, up to Dehradun it has come, and we put this transmitter, that is called PTT, platform transmitter terminal, on this two individuals on which arrived in July 2020 in Dehradun. And then we tried to track it, and we found that this bird remained in Dehradun for some week, and most of the time it was inside the Rajaji National Parks and having some visit to the Doon Valley also. And then it's returned back to via Western Ghats, and then towards the western coast of the Africa. So this type of satellite telemetry is really coming up, and now as your receivers are becoming smaller and smaller in size, and weight is getting reduced. So there is a lot of scope today in coming time that we can even very small birds or very small or mammals or any other animals of small sizes can also be tagged with these, and they can be their movement can be observed from the space. So this actually opens a new area of understanding of wildlife ecology, and where you can really relate the animal movement with respect to the resource availability, and you can also understand the disturbance which are happening on its migration path, human disturbance. You can minimize them. So this is a very interesting area. And here, satellite constellations are required for this, in order to have constant tracking of that particular animal with receiver. So the one example is that the Canes France has developed a Argos satellite system, and wherein our one satellite from India, the Saral satellite, that also we contribute. And this satellite constellation, just like GPS constellation, it's dedicated to satellite telemetry only. Nowadays, a lot of other private companies are also offering the satellite telemetry. So this is very useful, because birds and turtles and wild animals, elephants, tigers, conflict animals, all those can be tagged, and then we can do a better wildlife management using these advanced techniques. So I think I have already taken 1 hour time. So there are a few more things that we have satellites coming up, ISRO satellites. We have biomass satellites coming up. Tandem-L is coming up. These are all microwave satellites. Then LiDAR satellites, ISAT-2 and JEDI have already come. So these satellites actually are helping us to generate, will help us in generate a lot of ecological information about the ecosystem. For example, biomass mission from NASA is this European Space Agency is coming, which will give you information about the carbon stock of very dense forest, like tropical rainforest. Then similarly, we have, for example, places like NISAR, for example, we are going to launch next year by March, and this will help us in particularly assessing the carbon dynamics due to the disturbance and recovery pattern. So wherever we have rapid changes in the forest areas, and as well we want to understand how much carbon loss is happening, how much carbon gain is happening. So this with the carbon dynamics of the entire ecosystem, we will be able to assess through the NISAR mission. So all these missions will have a lot of utility, and many more ecosystem missions are planned, not only on microwave and this thing. So upcoming upcoming time is very vibrant as far as the satellite remote sensing new sensors and new products are there. So we, as a ecological community, those who are interested in actually using these sensors, they have to really develop a very good grip on the basic concepts, basic principles of the technology, and then they have to acquire some skills of processing these data sets, and then they can also think of publishing the and doing analysis and publishing in good journals. So that is what how we do science and how we can exploit the technology which is available from different sources. So now I will stop